I showed up to meet my daughter-in-law's family wearing my oldest clothes and acting like I'd never seen money before. They sneered at me, whispered about how their daughter married beneath her, and treated me like dirt. What they didn't know was that I owned the restaurant we were sitting in, and by dessert, I'd bought their family business out from under them. Don't miss a single beat of the story. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like, share this with a friend, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your double dose of my 10 p.m. stories awaits you every single day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m. Eleanor Chen had built an empire from nothing. But when her son brought home his fiancée, she made a decision that would change everything. She'd play the role of a simple, uneducated woman, test the family her son was marrying into, see who they really were beneath their polished smiles. What started as a harmless test became something far more dangerous. Because sometimes when you pretend to be powerless, you discover exactly how cruel people can be when they think you can't fight back. I built my first restaurant with borrowed money and calloused hands. That was 32 years ago, when I was a 28-year-old immigrant who barely spoke English and had nothing but determination and my grandmother's recipes. Now I own 17 restaurants across 3 states, 2 commercial properties, and enough investments to ensure my family never struggles the way I did. But my son Daniel doesn't know any of this. He knows his mother owns a restaurant. Singular. He thinks I'm comfortable but modest. A hard-working woman who did okay for herself. He has no idea I'm worth $47 million. I kept it that way deliberately. I wanted Daniel to grow up normal, grounded, hungry for his own success rather than waiting for mine. I paid for his education through scholarships I secretly funded. I lived in a nice but unremarkable house. I drove a practical car. I dressed simply. And it worked. Daniel became a successful architect not because of my money, but because of his own talent and drive. Then he met Melissa. Melissa Hartwell. 26 years old, blonde, beautiful, from a family that owned a chain of boutique hotels. Old money trying to look older. The kind of people who measured worth by last names and zip codes. When Daniel called to tell me he was engaged, his voice was electric with happiness. Mom, her family wants to meet you. Dinner next Saturday at Rousseau's. Rousseau's, the French restaurant downtown. One of the finest in the city. One of mine. I smiled into the phone, an idea forming. I'd love to meet them, sweetheart. And I would. Just not as Eleanor Chen, restaurant magnate. I spent the week preparing for the performance of my life. I went to thrift stores and bought clothes that looked worn but clean, a floral blouse with a small stain near the hem, polyester pants that had seen better decades, sensible shoes with scuffed toes. I practiced hunching my shoulders slightly, making myself smaller. I rehearsed grammatical errors, testing which ones felt natural and which ones would be too obvious. My assistant Jennifer watched me with growing horror. Mrs. Chen, you can't be serious about this. Jennifer had worked for me for 12 years. She knew everything: the businesses, the investments, the carefully constructed facade I'd maintained for Daniel's benefit. I need to know who these people really are, I told her. Daniel is going to marry into this family. I need to see them when they think they're better than me. What if Daniel finds out? He won't. He thinks I'm just his mom who runs a little restaurant. Jennifer shook her head but helped me anyway. She called Antoine, the manager at Rousseau's, and explained the situation. Antoine, a man I'd hired 15 years ago when he was a line cook with talent and no opportunities, nearly choked on his coffee. Madam, you want me to pretend I don't know you? Exactly. Treat me like any other guest. Maybe a little worse, if the Hartwells seemed to expect it. Antoine was quiet for a moment. Then, it would be my pleasure. Saturday arrived cold and gray, matching my nervous anticipation. I looked at myself in the mirror. Eleanor Chen, struggling immigrant, simple woman, nobody important. Perfect. Daniel picked me up at 6, his face bright with excitement. He looked so much like his father, same warm brown eyes, same genuine smile. His father had died when Daniel was 12, never knowing how successful I'd become. Sometimes I wondered if I'd kept the secret too long. But watching Daniel now, proud and independent, I knew I'd made the right choice. You look nice, Mom, he said, though I caught the slight hesitation in his voice. I dressed exactly as planned: the worn blouse, the dated pants, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. No jewelry except my wedding ring. No makeup except a touch of powder. Thank you, sweetheart. I wanted to make good impression. The grammatical error was deliberate. Daniel didn't notice he was used to my occasional slips, remnants of an accent I'd mostly trained away. Rousseau's sat on the corner of 5th and Madison, its elegant facade glowing with warm light. I designed that facade myself, worked with architects to create something that honored French tradition, while feeling welcoming rather than intimidating. As we walked toward the entrance, I saw them through the window. The Hartwells. 4 of them already seated at the best table in the house, the one I always reserved for VIP guests. Melissa's mother Catherine, 50-something, perfectly coiffed blonde hair, diamonds that caught the light. Her father Richard, tall, silver-haired, the kind of handsome that came from good genes and better dental work. Melissa's brother Christopher, 30, smug expression already in place. And Melissa, looking nervous, her hand fidgeting with her napkin. Antoine opened the door, his face professionally neutral. "Good evening, sir," he said to Daniel. Then his eyes slid to me, dismissive. "Madam." The performance had begun. Catherine Hartwell's smile froze when she saw me. It was subtle, a microscopic tightening around her eyes, a fractional pause before she stood to greet us. But I'd spent 30 years reading people across negotiating tables, and I saw it clearly: disappointment, judgment, poorly concealed disdain. "You must be Eleanor," she said, extending a hand that barely touched mine. "How lovely to finally meet you." Her voice dripped with the kind of politeness that was really an insult. Richard stood as well, his handshake firmer but his eyes already dismissing me. "Daniel's told us so much about you." I doubted that was true. Daniel kept his personal life private, even from me. Christopher didn't bother standing. He gave me a nod that looked more like a head tilt, his attention already back on his phone. Melissa jumped up quickly, her face flushed. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so glad you could come." Her warmth seemed genuine, which was the only thing that kept my performance from faltering. We sat. A server appeared immediately, Marcus, one of my best waiters, who'd worked his way from busboy to floor manager. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second and I saw understanding there. "May I offer you the wine list?" Marcus asked the table generally. "The 2015 Bordeaux," Richard said without looking at him. Then, as an afterthought, "Do you drink wine, Eleanor?" The way he said my name, like he was trying it out, testing whether someone like me deserved a first-name basis. "Oh, I don't know much about wine," I said, making my voice small. "Maybe just water is okay." Catherine's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Of course. Whatever you're comfortable with." The conversation started politely enough, but the undercurrent was impossible to miss. "So, Eleanor, Daniel mentioned you own a restaurant." Catherine's tone suggested restaurant was a generous term. "That must be charming." "Yes, small place. Chinese food, very simple. I work very hard." I laid the accent on thicker, watched their faces. Richard's expression shifted to something like pity. Christopher smirked at his phone. "How quaint," Catherine said. "Richard and I have always admired people with entrepreneurial spirit, even in modest ventures." Modest ventures. My restaurant empire generated $12 million in annual revenue, but she'd never know that. "It's honest work," I said quietly, playing the part perfectly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Mom's restaurant is really successful. She's built something incredible." "I'm sure it's lovely," Richard interrupted smoothly. "But let's talk about you too. The wedding. Have you set a date?" Melissa's eyes lit up. "We're thinking of June. Garden ceremony, maybe at the club," Catherine cut in. "Obviously. We've already spoken to the events coordinator. The Hartwell name carries significant weight there." "Mom, we haven't decided yet," Melissa said, her voice smaller now. "Darling, there's really no other option. Unless you want to have it somewhere less appropriate." Catherine's eyes flickered to me, the implication clear. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Actually, we were thinking maybe something smaller. More intimate." "Nonsense. This is a Hartwell wedding. There are expectations. Standards." Richard said it pleasantly, but there was steel underneath. The server arrived with menus, gorgeous leather-bound books showcasing Antoine's seasonal creations. I'd approved every dish myself last month. "The duck is exceptional," Marcus offered. "I think I just have the soup," I said hesitantly. "The prices here are quite." I let the sentence trail off, embarrassed. Catherine's smile finally reached her eyes. Dinner continued with surgical cruelty disguised as conversation. Eleanor, do you follow the social season? Catherine asked, delicately cutting her foie gras. The galas, the charity events? I'm sorry, I don't understand. Social season. Christopher laughed into his wine glass. She's serious. Christopher, Melissa whispered sharply. Catherine patted my hand in a gesture that looked maternal but felt patronizing. Don't worry, dear. It's not something everyone has access to. These things are rather exclusive. My mother works 80 hours a week, Daniel said, his voice tight. She doesn't have time for. Of course, Richard interrupted. Hard work is admirable. Though at a certain point, one should be able to enjoy the fruits of one's labor. Have you thought about retirement, Eleanor? Retirement? I made my eyes widen. Oh no, I need to work. The restaurant pays bills, you know. And maybe someday help Daniel with house, grandchildren. The table went silent. I just confirmed what they suspected. I'd need their financial support, or Daniel would need theirs. Catherine's expression shifted to something harder. How generous you are, thinking of future grandchildren. Of course, with the Hartwell family trust, Melissa and Daniel will be quite comfortable. Won't need assistance from anyone. The emphasis on anyone was clear. That's enough, Daniel said quietly. But Catherine was just warming up. I'm simply being practical, darling. When families merge, it's important to understand everyone's position. Eleanor, you understand, don't you? We just want what's best for our daughter. And Daniel, of course. She smiled at me, and in that smile I saw everything. They thought I was a burden Daniel would have to carry. A poor immigrant mother he'd need to support. An embarrassment to be managed and hidden. The main course arrived, my soup, their elaborate entrees. I ate slowly, carefully, playing the part of someone overwhelmed by the elegant surroundings. Every so often I'd glance around the restaurant with wide eyes, as if I'd never seen anything so fancy. It was my restaurant, my vision, my empire. And I was pretending to be intimidated by it. This place is really something, I said to Daniel. So expensive. You shouldn't have brought me somewhere so fancy. Mom, it's fine. You deserve. Actually, Richard interrupted. This reminds me. Eleanor, we should discuss the wedding expenses. Obviously, the Hartwell family will handle the bulk of the costs, given the scale we're planning. But traditionally, the bride's family covers certain elements, and the groom's family contributes what they can. He let the sentence hang delicately in the air. I'm not sure I understand, I said. Catherine jumped in, her voice dripping with false sympathy. What Richard means is that we wouldn't want you to feel obligated to contribute beyond your means. If you could manage, say, $5,000 toward the rehearsal dinner? Something small within your budget. $5,000. For a wedding that would easily cost $200,000. They were making it clear exactly where I stood in their hierarchy. I would need to save, I said quietly. Maybe take extra shifts. Don't worry about it, Mom, Daniel said, his face flushed with embarrassment and anger. I'll handle it. See? Catherine beamed. It all works out. Daniel is such a good son. Taking care of everyone. The implication was clear. I was someone who needed taking care of. Melissa looked miserable, pushing food around her plate. Christopher checked his phone, smirking at something, and I made my decision that it was time to end this game. Actually, I said, setting down my soup spoon with deliberate care, I think I can contribute little more than $5,000. Catherine's eyebrows lifted in polite surprise. Oh? Well, that's generous. Yes. Maybe I will contribute the venue. I let my accent soften slightly. I think I can arrange something nice. Richard chuckled indulgently. That's very sweet, Eleanor. But the venue is already handled. The club has a 2-year waiting list. The Hartwell name moved us to the front. Actually, Dad, we haven't officially booked yet, Melissa said quietly. I told you, Daniel, and I wanted to discuss. There's nothing to discuss, Catherine said firmly. It's been decided. I looked at Daniel, my brilliant, kind, independent son who'd never asked me for anything because I'd taught him not to need anyone, who had no idea his mother could buy their precious club 10 times over. What if, I said carefully, what if the venue was here? The table went silent. Here. Christopher looked up from his phone for the first time, actually paying attention. At this restaurant? Not just this restaurant, I said, my voice stronger now. I own an event space. Beautiful space. Perfect for a wedding. It wasn't a lie. The building next door to Rousseau's was mine, a gorgeously restored historic property I used for private events. Last year, a senator's daughter had her wedding there. Catherine laughed, a delicate, cutting sound. Oh, Eleanor, that's very thoughtful, but I don't think you understand the scale we're talking about. We're expecting 300 guests. Senators, business leaders, the who's who of. I understand perfectly, I said. And I smiled. The same smile I'd used in boardrooms when someone underestimated me. Catherine's laughter faltered. Mom, you don't have to. Daniel started. I held up my hand gently. Daniel, let me speak. Then I turned to Richard, my posture straightening, my accent falling away like a discarded coat. Mr. Hartwell, you asked earlier about the social season. I don't attend because I'm usually the one hosting. The Chen Foundation's annual gala raised $4 million for children's literacy last year. Perhaps you've heard of it. Richard's face went blank. Of course he'd heard of it. Everyone had. As for retirement, I continued, looking at Catherine now, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not quite ready to step away from my 17 restaurants, including this one, or my commercial real estate holdings, or my investment portfolio. The color drained from Catherine's face. Christopher's phone slipped from his hand, clattering on the table. 17. Melissa whispered. This restaurant, I said, gesturing around us. Rousseau's. I opened it 11 years ago. Antoine, I nodded to the manager hovering nearby, has worked with me since the beginning. Haven't you, Antoine? Antoine stepped forward, his professional mask finally cracking into a genuine smile. It has been my honor, Madame Chen. Madame Chen. Richard's voice was strangled. Eleanor Chen, I said clearly. CEO of Chen Hospitality Group. Perhaps you've heard of it. They had. Everyone in the restaurant industry had. We'd just been featured in Forbes. Catherine's mouth opened and closed silently. The $5,000 I mentioned? I continued conversationally. That was a test. Toc if you'd let an old immigrant woman struggle to contribute to her son's wedding, you passed with flying colors. Daniel was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Mom. His voice was small, confused. What's going on? I reached across the table and took Daniel's hand. Sweetheart, I need to explain something. And I need you to understand why I did what I did. He looked stunned, processing, but he nodded. When you were young, after your father died, I made a choice. I didn't want you to grow up as the rich kid, the one who never had to work for anything. I wanted you to find your own path, build your own success. So I hid mine. You let me think you were struggling, Daniel said slowly. All those times I tried to help you, send you money. I put it in an account for you. It's waiting. Along with quite a bit more. How much more? He whispered. Enough that you'll never need the Hartwell family trust. Catherine finally found her voice. I don't. You let us believe. I let you reveal exactly who you are, I said calmly. People show their true nature when they think they're speaking to someone beneath them. You sneered at my clothes, dismissed my work, treated me like a charity case. You were ready to exclude me from my own son's wedding because you thought I was poor. Richard cleared his throat, trying to recover. Mrs. Chen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Just clarity. I signaled to Antoine. The Hartwells' dinner tonight is complimentary. Consider it my gift. Catherine's face flushed red. We don't need. Everyone needs kindness, I interrupted. Even from people they've looked down on. I stood and Daniel stood with me, still holding my hand. Melissa, I said gently, if you truly love my son, you're welcome in our family. But your parents need to understand something. I looked directly at Catherine and Richard. I didn't build my empire by accepting how people tried to define me. And I won't let anyone do that to my son either. Don't look away now. Eleanor's about to reveal something that changes everything. Stay with me. The drive home was silent for the first 10 minutes. Daniel sat in the passenger seat of my practical sedan, which suddenly felt ridiculous given what he now knew, his face illuminated by passing streetlights, expression unreadable finally. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have worked as hard if you'd known? Would you have pushed yourself, fought for every project, built your reputation from nothing? I don't know, he admitted. Maybe not. That's why. More silence. Then, all those years. All those times I worried about you. Tried to help. And you were. Protecting you. From becoming them. I nodded back toward the restaurant. The Hartwells think money makes them better than other people. I wanted you to know your own worth had nothing to do with my bank account. Daniel's eyes were wet. You let me think you were struggling. You were never going to let me struggle, sweetheart. That's who you are. I just needed you to discover who you were first. We pulled up to his apartment, a nice place in a good neighborhood, paid for with his own money. He didn't move to get out. What happens now? He asked. With Melissa? With her family? That depends on what you want. What she wants. I love her, he said quietly. But her family. Her family showed you exactly who they are tonight. The question is whether Melissa is like them, or whether she's something different. As if summoned, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. He read it, his expression softening. She says she's sorry. Says she didn't know they'd be like that. Wants to talk. Melissa came to my house the next morning. My real house, not the modest one Daniel thought I lived in. The one in Westchester with the gardens and the view. The one I'd bought 10 years ago but kept private. Telling Daniel I was house-sitting for a friend whenever he visited, her eyes widened when she pulled through the gates. I met her at the door, dressed casually but in clothes that actually fit. From this decade at no performance today. Just Eleanor Chen. Mrs. Chen, she stopped, looking around the foyer with its chandelier and marble floors. I had no idea. That was the point. Come in. We sat in the living room, the one I'd designed myself, with comfortable furniture and family photos Daniel didn't know existed. Pictures of me at charity events, cutting ribbons, shaking hands with mayors and governors. Melissa's hands twisted in her lap. My parents called me last night. You're devastated. Humiliated. Good. She looked up, startled. Melissa, I need you to understand something. Last night wasn't about humiliating your parents. It was about protecting my son. If you marry Daniel, you need to decide right now what kind of person you're going to be. What do you mean? Are you going to be like them? Looking down on people, measuring worth by money and status? Or are you going to be someone who sees people for who they really are? Melissa was quiet for a long moment. Then, my whole life I've watched my parents judge people. Rank them. Dismiss them. I hated it. But I didn't know how to be different. Now's your chance. My parents want me to break up with Daniel, Melissa said quietly. They say our family's reputation has been damaged. That we can't be associated with someone who deceived us. I almost laughed. They're the ones who deceived themselves. I just wore old clothes. I know. I told them that. We had a huge fight. Christopher said I was being naive. My father said if I married Daniel, I'd be making a mistake that would follow me forever. And what did you say? Melissa met my eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen last night at dinner. Strength. Determination. I told them they were wrong. That Daniel is the best man I've ever met. And if they couldn't see that, it was their loss. You know they'll make this difficult. Families like yours, they don't forgive easily. I know. Melissa's voice wavered slightly but held firm. My mother's already calling relatives, spinning the story, making you sound like some kind of con artist who manipulated them. Let her. Mrs. Chen, they're talking about cutting me off. The trust fund, my position in the company, everything. I leaned forward, studying this young woman my son loved. Melissa, can I tell you something? When I came to this country, I had $300 in a suitcase. My own family told me I was making a mistake, that I'd fail and come crawling back. I built everything you see from nothing. Not because I had money or connections or family support. Because I refused to let anyone else define my worth. I'm not as strong as you. You're stronger than you think. You just haven't been tested yet. She smiled sadly. I'm being tested now. 3 days later, Richard Hartwell called me. Not Daniel. Not Melissa. Me. Mrs. Chen, I think we should meet. Privately. To discuss this situation. What situation would that be? Don't play games. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You deliberately misrepresented yourself, embarrassed my family, and now you're trying to drive a wedge between Melissa and us. I wore old clothes to dinner, Mr. Hartwell. Your family did the rest. A pause. Then, what do you want? Excuse me. Everyone wants something. Money. Business connections. What's your price to make this go away? I felt something cold settle in my chest. He thought this was a transaction. That I'd orchestrated everything as some kind of power play or shakedown. There is no price, I said quietly. I don't want anything from you. Everyone wants something. Not from people like you. Another pause, longer this time. You think you're better than us. No. I think I'm different from you. You measure people by what they can give you. I measure them by who they are. Very philosophical. But let's be practical. You have to know this marriage is a mistake. Daniel and Melissa come from different worlds. Different values. It won't work. They come from the same world, I corrected. They just had different guides through it. Daniel had me. Melissa had you. Now she's choosing a different path. She's making a mistake. Then let her make it. Or are you so controlling that you can't let your daughter choose her own life? Richard's voice went cold. You're going to regret this, Mrs. Chen. Is that a threat? It's a fact. The Hartwell family has significant influence in this city. One word from me, I hung up. Richard Hartwell made good on his implied threat. Over the next 2 weeks, 3 of my restaurant suppliers suddenly had supply chain issues. A property deal I'd been negotiating fell through when the seller got a better offer. 2 important clients canceled major events. Jennifer walked into my office with a stack of papers, her face grim. It's the Hartwells. I traced it all back. Richard's been making calls. Pulling strings. He's trying to hurt your business. How bad is it? Not terrible. Mostly inconvenient. But he's persistent. I looked at the paper's evidence of Richard's petty revenge. Part of me was angry. But mostly I was tired. Set up a meeting, I said. With Richard. Tell him I'm ready to negotiate. Jennifer's eyebrows rose. You're giving in? I'm ending this. The meeting was set for Friday afternoon at a neutral location, a lawyer's office downtown. Richard arrived with Christopher and 2 attorneys. Clearly expecting a surrender, I arrived alone. Mrs. Chen, Richard said, settling into his chair with obvious satisfaction. I'm glad you've decided to be reasonable. Before we begin, I said, I want you to know something. I've been recording our phone conversations, including the one where you threatened me. Richard's smile faltered. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Not in this state. One-party consent. I slid a folder across the table. I also have documentation of every business interference you've orchestrated, the suppliers you pressured, the deals you sabotaged, the clients you poached. Richard's face went pale. Now, I said, smiling pleasantly, let's negotiate. But I wasn't there to negotiate. I was there to win. Eleanor Chen had spent her life building an empire while pretending to be invisible. But when her son's future was threatened, she stopped hiding. Some mothers bake cookies. Others buy out your business and teach you what real power looks like. Tomorrow night, another secret unfolds. If this story touched you, stay with me for the next one. Tap subscribe, hit like, share it with someone who would feel it, and leave your thoughts in the comments. My 10 p.m. stories arrives every day at 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., so you're always caught up.